This is the last public hearing, so we want to do it a little formal. So I'll go ahead and call the special called board meeting for August 11th for the millage rate public hearing to order. And I guess we'll just let it sit for 5 minutes or so and see if anybody comes in.
It's also the budget hearing.
And also, this is going to be also the budget hearing? Okay.
Do we know if we have somebody?
What's that?
Do we know if we have somebody?
Yeah, I don't know if we, it's 6 o'clock, I don't know if that.
I found that on the
Somebody
floor.
around here for the-
It was just right there, but I don't know where the other piece is.
Probably in my pocket.
Oh, okay, that's good if you had it
So
on
this is
your
actually
pocket.
also the budget hearing as well.
Yeah,
Yep,
budget-
that's
budget
good.
and millage.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, God. Huh?
That's one good. If someone's going to speak,
Exactly.
I'm going to call them in. But if someone wants to speak, yeah, yes, are there anyone want to speak?
You might want to check if there's anybody here for the budget or the millage. This is the time to come in if they want to.
Budget or millage?
Budget or millage?
Is anyone here for the budget or millage meeting?
Anyone here for budget or millage?
No.
None of their kids go to school.
That they say?
That sounds like Cindy.
Y'all do whatever you want. Just want to fight me.
Derek Jackson.
Yeah, that's him and his walk in. He's in town? He's in town?
Yeah.
And go in public?
Yeah, I'd say if you waited 5 minutes, you can declare this meeting adjourned.
Okay. All right. Guess I don't know if I need to, you just said I can adjourn it right here. Don't have to really go formalities on this?
There's no vote.
No, no vote?
so-
Okay. So we'll adjourn at 6:05.
Just go into your regular meeting.
All right. Y'all ready? Go ahead and go on in.
Okay.
All right. Good evening. I'll call the regular scheduled board meeting for August the 11th, 2020 to order. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Jurgen for the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you for all the many wonderful blessings that you've given to us. Lord, we ask for your hand of protection to cover us, Lord, in our community and our school system for this upcoming year. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Jurgen. We appreciate that. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Tate for the spotlight. And turn over to you. Let you bring Ms. Tate in for the spotlight.
Tonight's spotlight, we're going to have representatives from Southeast Georgia Health System. They're here to speak to us about the wearing of masks and face coverings by our students.
If you don't mind, I'll
Please.
just a bit. If y'all would just go through each of you and introduce yourself and what you do, and then we'll go back to each person having the be able to speak and let us know your opinions of what we've been discussing.
Okay. My name is Dr. Jennifer Miller. I moved here 21 years ago, and I'm a family practice doctor. Started both Glynn Immediate Care. I married Danny Miller, who is a product of the Glynn County School System of St. Simon's Elementary, Glynn Middle, and Glynn Academy. And I've been in private practice since as a family physician. We have 4 children that have all gone through Glynn County Public Schools, 2 still in the school system now.
I'm Steve Squire. I'm an anesthesiologist at the hospital. I work at the Brunswick Hospital and the Camden Hospital. I've been here for 20 plus years, raised a family, and love it here and want to stay forever.
Hi, I'm Cindy Pritchard. I'm the charge nurse in the ER, one of them. I've been here 8 years. Moved down here a long time, 8 years ago. I have 2 children that are in the Glynn County, or 2 grandchildren in the Glynn County School System also.
I'm Danny Miller. I am a product of the area since 4th grade, with about a 12-year break in the middle for school and residency. I'm residency trained and board certified in emergency medicine, and I'm the medical director for the 3 hospital immediate care centers.
I'm Mohsen Akbagi. I am the ER physician and medical director for both Brunswick and Camden Emergency Room.
Welcome.
Go ahead and speak when you're ready.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay, first off, thank you guys. I realize the hard position all of you are in. When you signed up to be board members, you didn't realize you were signing up to work during a pandemic. Just a little history, our last pandemic was 1916, so it's been 100 years, and not much has changed in how to handle a pandemic. It's the same thing that we did back then, which are masks, social distancing, hand washing. For all the advances we've made, we are coming back to those same basics. And I think, unfortunately, the pandemic has been a bit, it has become something that is political, where we are here to speak on behalf of science and to bring it back to science, because that's really where it deserves to be. I will speak for myself, that I feel very strongly in favor of a mask. And I don't care the term, mandate, require, dress code. I feel that it is a very basic protection. If our goal is to keep schools open, and our goal is to serve kids who can't have access to computers and internet, then we need to do everything we can to make that happen, and that includes masks. I am also the mother who has been required to pick up her daughter because her shorts were too short at school, and it was a dress code violation. No one was going to die because of it. It wasn't a health risk, but I had to go get her. So I firmly believe that if we can be firm on things like that, that when it really impacts death tolls and lives, that we should be able to be firm on that as well.
So to echo a little bit about what Jennifer just said, if your goal is to be in person, and I think there's a lot of reasons that that's a great thing, even though our numbers look terrible as far as community spread. But there are other reasons, as y'all have talked about, to be in person. If your goal is to be in person and you want to stay in person, then the three things: wear a mask, social distance, and wash your hands. And the idea that you wouldn't do every single thing that you can do, especially when it's as easy as that. If you don't do that, then more people are going to get sick, first. School is going to close for in-person, second. And third, more people are going to die. Because if 400 kids get sick, and then they spread it to 1 or 2 parents or grandparents, then the kids are going to be fine, more than likely, but some of those adults, some of those grandparents, some of those parents are going to be really sick. We've all seen it in the hospital. We've all seen a 50-year-old person, a 40-year-old person, otherwise healthy, get really sick and die. It's a terrible thing. And some of these other people will speak to it. It is something that we've never seen. We've probably got 100 years of experience here between this group, and everybody, every single day, is seeing stuff that just breaks their heart. You know, a 50-year-old father of 4 is in the hospital by himself, and he's dying. He doesn't get to say goodbye to his children, and it's because he's got this disease. And if we open up without masks, then more people are going to get it than if we open up with masks. I mean, it's very simple. That's all I'll pass along.
And when the effectiveness of masks, we would not be working, any of us, right now, if we weren't wearing masks. Right now, I have 9 admitted patients that I'm holding in the ER that have COVID. I've been in and out of those rooms all day, and I don't think any of you would be comfortable if we didn't have masks on. The other thing is, I had COVID. I experienced COVID from my grandchildren that were 10 months old. I don't want any of you to ever have it. I was lucky, but we have a 21-year-old in the ER that we just diagnosed with bilateral pulmonary embolisms 15 minutes before I left. I am passionate about this. I've watched too many people die, and it's not fun. So if we can do anything, if we can save one grandparent, one 30-year-old, you all have not seen what we've seen.
So Jennifer talked about science. The science on masks is very clear. They prevent the transmission of this disease. Not 100%, but what they've estimated is you have about a 60% reduction with masks and close to 70 to 80%, I think it is, if you have masks and social distancing. I mean, they're very effective. That's number one. Number two is, what I really think is important is to recognize who this disease is predominantly affecting. And it's the poor, it's the single mothers, it's the grandmothers raising kids, the same people that we want in-person learning for. Because school, obviously, is a source of food for some of these kids, but it also allows parents to work. We're very fortunate. I've got a big house. My kids go to school, other kids aren't masking. I'm going to quarantine on the other side of the house. But most people don't have that luxury. You've got kids coming home to their 6-year-old, not healthy in the first place grandmother, who is very likely to die if they get it. You have multi-generation families living in the same house, 20, 30 people. It's real. It's out there. We all know it. These are the people that are getting affected by the disease. And if we don't mandate masks in the school, they're going to predominantly feel the effects. And then last thing that I would say, if I can remember my train of thought. Let's see. Family. Oh, I'll let you go, because I got one more thing, but I'm going to come back to this second.
Now, just echoing what Cindy said, we work in the ER, and this is beginning of March. We've been dealing with this, and this is the testimony that I have at least 40 providers working in Brunswick, and at least 15 to 20 in Camden ER. We've had one physician that contracted COVID, and he said he got it from his kids. Now, if mask wasn't working, we constantly, as Cindy said, we go into the room and come back. Like we visit these patients, we have to take care of them. So if mask wasn't working, then we all had it. Since March, I've been working constantly in the ER, so the same thing with the entire staff. We had few nursing staff, and as Cindy said, most of these people, they contracted disease somewhere else, not in the emergency room. And there's no magic for us. We're just wearing masks and we're protecting ourselves. We wash our hands, and we have different masks. We have a little bit better mask, N95, when we go see these patients. But the bottom line works. I've been with COVID patients since March, exposed, and I just had it, last week I had a test, still negative. I had some body aches, and I found out maybe I got it. And maybe eventually we all get it, and we all have to wait for the vaccine and other stuff. But as much as we can, because as Steve mentioned and everyone else mentioned, is that most of the young people might be okay, depending on what baseline medical problems they have. But we all have mothers, we have all fathers, we have young kids, we start seeing this. So by wearing masks and promoting it, I think there's nothing wrong. Kids, they can play, they can do whatever they want to do. If we want to open the school. If we want to do an online school, that's a different story. But if we would, I cannot emphasize, you guys really do not want to come to the ER or the hospital to see any of us. You don't need to do that. And that's the reality. We've never been that frank. We always try to play politics. There's no politics here. You want to see us outside, in the park, in the restaurant, anywhere that you might be going, but you don't want to come to the emergency room and see us with you and your family members. So,
and I would echo that. I've seen nothing but COVID patients since March, and I have, knock on wood, tested negative to date and haven't had any problems. They work. The other couple things that I was going to say was that viruses love kids, because all viruses want to do, they just want to be happy and multiply. That's all they want to do, and they want to hop from host to host, and they want to do their thing. In a take COVID out of the picture, when you go from summer to the school year, my business jumps up 50 to 60% at a minimum. And it's not just kids I'm seeing. I'm seeing the adults who have gotten everything that the kids bring home. It's a real phenomenon, and it's not to be taken lightly. The last thing that I would say is, because I don't think it's been said, is that I love my kids. I love for them to go out and ride on their bikes, and I recommend that they wear their helmets. And if I happen to be in the neighborhood out and I see my kid on the bike, odds are they're not wearing their helmet. It's hanging from their handlebar, and they throw it on the driveway before they come in. Kids are great, but the idea that they're going to do something that they perceive as not fun, not cool, not whatever, based on a recommendation, I think it's kind of foolish. We've all seen it with our own kids. But if we mandate it and we make it part of the dress code, we make it part of the policy, and we have real consequences for not doing it, then I think we can really make a difference.
Can you speak to the ER census
It's
and
the entire hospital
in the
census.
hospital?
yeah, 2 weeks ago, and maybe this is not something to be proud of, but we have 98 COVID patients in this small hospital here. 98. The entire Baptist system in Jacksonville, 4 big hospitals and 3 urgent cares, they have 130. We have 98 patients there. At one point, literally, we now assume that everybody comes to the ER is COVID. Regardless what the symptoms is, that's what we protect ourselves. We actually now, we see patients with N95 and respirator. We say, it doesn't matter why you're here, let me just protect myself. Because here's the problem, is that if I have a physician or provider that tested positive, which we had one 2 weeks ago, he's out of commission for 2 weeks. And imagine that if I have we don't have that many staff to just walking around. If half of my staff is, that means I have to work double shift. And so that the stress of seeing patients and all this stuff, and that's why I cannot, my kids cannot, if we go somewhere, we go outside and everything, if they know that, very strict with that. I can control my kids. But the number of the patients that we see in the emergency room and in the hospital right now, I want to say 70%, 75%, that they're all COVID related. So I don't even, sometimes even wonder, what happened to the heart attack and strokes? Because the number has gone significantly down. We're just dealing with COVID. And I have to say, as sad it is, and this is the truth, I personally, we just had a patient, a 37-year-old. 37-year-old went home on Thursday that did not meet the criteria for admission. He came back on Sunday as a cardiac arrest. I cannot emphasize, we're not trying to scare you, we're trying to relay the true message that how serious this thing is. And as everybody said, we have told our kids to do stuff, they don't like to do it. And I think I'm one of those people that my kid needs to go to school. I don't think that my kid learns, as this talking about my own kid, that they don't learn that much, at least my kid, they don't learn online school. So I want them to go. But I want them to follow the same thing, dress code. This would be part of the dress code. And if you don't do it, then you can't come back. And I think that, that hopefully we'll go through this 6 months. We'll be a vaccine, we'll go back. This is going to be like the flu. Everybody gets a vaccine. We probably have to get it for a few years until this is not going to be an issue. But if you're really thinking of opening the school, please consider the mask.
I have a couple of things to add because I speak both languages and it doesn't come out that way.
Okay.
So the first thing is, when he says that there's 98 COVID patients that are in the hospital, that's saying that the 220, when we reach 220, that's the max. That's not the number because we've had to expand and do some other things. But when you meet 220, you're starting to catch it. So before COVID last year, we stayed in the 180s, 190s. Without that 98 that are COVID positive. So without knowing the number, what's overly full, you don't understand that 98 is a significant event. The other thing, she spoke of the 9 holdings in the ER. What does that actually cause? Well, it decreases patient care to everybody else because an ER nurse is not equipped and is not a part of the framework of follow-up care for somebody being there for 48 hours. So what happens is a person who is not COVID or something else doesn't get what they need. Like the 26-year-old who died and it wasn't COVID related. It wasn't because of the ER didn't do what they needed to do or the patient wasn't taken care of. It was because they weren't in the appropriate place getting the appropriate care at the appropriate times, which is out of the realm of the ER. The other thing, Dr. Miller spoke of how close some communities are. He has a big house. He gets to, kids, I'm going to isolate you over there. The Hispanic community has probably been affected somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90%. And that's because there's so many within a house that it's spread, and they're almost done with it because almost every single one of them have been through the ER who's in our community. So what he was saying is it's that impactful to the community that is at risk, which is what we're talking about with the, who we're talking about, that community. And we don't want to do that. That's why you want to either mandate, you don't have to use the word mandate, we can use the word we were talking, require. Make it a part of the dress code. We don't require people to wear pants, but they do. And because we expect you to wear pants to school. You're expected to wear a seatbelt in your car. It's not to protect anybody else. It's to protect you, the seatbelt in your car. So when we talk about being mandated and told to do things, no, we don't like that. But we're trying to protect the rest of the community. I'm going to say our Governor Kemp came out and said, I want local control. And he swore by, I want local control. So he gave it to the locals. We're part of the locals. We can make that decision. So what did he do to Atlanta? I tell you all the time, don't listen to what I say, look at what I do. What did he do? He's suing Atlanta for mandating. But there's 30 or 60-something counties that are deciding on mandating. I think that we can make a difference, and your medical community is getting their rumpuses beat on a daily basis. Cindy's been doing this for a couple of years. And then when you see her, and she's just she's crying, and she's not crying, but tears are coming from her eyes, and she's like, I can't make a difference. we can make a difference by just mandating or requiring kids to wear masks. So I appreciate them coming and speaking to us. And hopefully y'all heard some from the medical community of the 200 people who signed the form that said, please mandate masks. So we need to work as a community and not a silo. We all need to get together, be together, and make a difference for our whole community. And if it's just putting on a mask to decrease the curve, I think it's a worthy adventure. So thank y'all for coming, and thank y'all for
Anybody has
listening.
any questions?
Any questions,
Yeah,
follow up,
any
or ask? I
We
mean,
are
if
feeling,
not now, I am.
And there are
Glynn
no
here 6 days a week, so.
no stupid questions.
Looking forward to talking about
seriously.
You guys can get a hold of me, John knows my information if anyone has questions.
Absolutely.
So, in the words of Hamilton, history has his eyes on you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. Okay. All right, that brings us down to citizens address the board. We've got one person signed up, Mr. Derek Ivan Heck. Before you start, Derek, I'm going to read a little preamble. He's coming. I see him coming around there. Hey, Derek, how are you? Good. I'm going to read a little preamble before you get started.
Okay, true.
All right. The Board of Education has adopted a policy that permits citizens, under certain circumstances, to address the board on a variety of topics of general concern to the operation of our schools. We welcome visitors to the board meetings and are interested in hearing from the taxpayers and patrons of our school system. We have a few simple rules for public comment. Each person wishing to address the board must sign this roster. Each person is limited to 5 minutes, and the public comment portion of the meeting will not exceed 30 minutes. Any citizen who has a specific complaint involving an employee must first address the issue with the superintendent, and if not resolved, then may request to speak with the board. However, certain matters involving personnel and students must be heard in closed session. The superintendent will inform you whether your complaint is one which should be referred to an executive session with the board. By signing this sheet, you are agreeing to abide by these rules. All right, go ahead, Derek. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, very happy to be back in Brunswick. Happy to be standing before the school board. I have submitted a letter. I would say it's an informal request to date, something that can be hammered out a little bit longer. Let me just start by doing somewhat of an introduction, and then I think later on there may be a chance to, for you all to ask me some questions. I'm a native of Brunswick, Georgia. I'm a graduate research and teaching associate at the Stanford University Graduate School of Education. My current post follows my most recent tenure as a KU Irvis Equity and Justice Fellow at the Center for Urban Education at the University of Pittsburgh, where I received my master's. My diversity, equity, and inclusion practice is supported by research that centers issues of implicit bias and racial, gender, sexual identity development within learning spaces. In partnership 3 years ago with the U.S. Department of State and Education, I visited Ethiopia's Walaita Sort of University, and I received a Fulbright grant in 2017. I hold also a degree in architecture, which might be your knowledge of me, if at all, because I worked with John Q. Associates for about 4 years. I received my degree in architecture from Florida A&M University, and I conducted graduate studies both at Carnegie Mellon and University of Pittsburgh. I am a contributing author to a recently released book, Critical Race Theory in Teacher Education, Informing Classroom Culture and Practice. I've also presented my scholarship at the inaugural Teach Africa Conference at the University of Pittsburgh and the Conference of Pennsylvania Council for International Education and the annual meeting of the American Educational Association. I am currently a member of the American Educational Research Association, the 100 Black Men of Western Pennsylvania, and the FAMU National Alumni Association, and the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. So I wanted to just give you somewhat of a background into my experience. I'm also a product of Alabama, Jane Macon, and Brunswick High. I was also Brunswick High's first Black student body president. And one of the things that I wanted to do, being home and being here, is to offer and suggest a partnership around a study of implicit bias. I think most of what we have been exposed to have been research on discipline or high-stakes testing. And so what I want to do is study, particularly with my hometown and this school board, study some of those benign just common, simple interactions between teachers where implicit bias may play a role. My aim is to do so with an anonymous point of view, so that protocols would make sure that not one individual, not one child, not one teacher, or the district is identified. And the reason I come before you is because I don't come as an external researcher. I have stake in this city, I have stake in this community, and so I would not be coming as a person who just came to extract. I think in the long term, it's a possibility that this could help to develop professional development opportunities, and that we could possibly make a good school system great, particularly around areas of implicit bias. One of the things that I'm able to most do is to broach subjects that might be difficult. And I think what we are able to do in this collaboration is bring all of the resources of the Stamp University School of Education, which is the second most wealthy school of education in the country. My research team, including myself, Drs. Alvin Pearman, Dr. Brian Brown, and we would want to be in partnership for an extended period of time and be at your service and make sure that this is a mutually beneficial project and process. So I'm not sure if this is the time for questions, but I'm happy to answer questions now or later.
It's not really a Q&A, it's more just to present.
Okay.
But, I mean, I'm not opposed, I mean, if there were any questions. But if not, I know you said you sent a letter out, I'm assuming, so.
I did.
So we've got, so, you know, we can get in touch, we can get in touch with Dr. Spence and we'll set up a meeting or something like that.
Okay, all right. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Is that it?
That's all that I have. I
Great.
think I've exhausted most of my time.
Thanks a lot, Derek. Good seeing you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Alrighty. All right. That's going to bring us down to approval of the agenda. Before we approve it, I'd like to pull the meeting minutes. There's a couple of just little errors, and Miss Britt has been out for the past few days, so I'd like to pull 7, 8, and 9 and put them on next month's agenda to approve, to give her time to go through and check over that. So if we can pull 7, 8, and 9. All right, pulling 7, 8, and 9, I'll accept the motion to approve the agenda as presented. Reverend Bobbitt?
Second?
Second. Mr. Medalla? All those in favor? Unanimous, that passes 7-0. All right, that brings us to consent agenda items. Number 6. I'd like to consent 10A, 10B, C1. Any policy, John? E, so I'd like to consent E. Any additions or deletions? All right. Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll read those back. Consent, 10A is under the superintendent's report is personnel, 10B is field trips, 10C1 is the GOOD report, and E is the policy committee chair. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Sams, second by Reverend Bobbitt. All those in favor? It's unanimous, passes 7-0. And that'll bring us down to the superintendent's report.
First item is the construction manager for Brunswick High School MDF room, Mr. Boudreaux.
Yes, thank you. This is kind of a two-parter we went over on Thursday of last week. The first step would be to approve R.H. Tyson as the highest rated construction manager for this little project. They rated it 9.3, and the other proposer was at 7. And these were the only two. And, you know, we have a good history with Tyson, so, I mean, it's kind of seamless with them at this point.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the reason we're wanting a construction manager, if I remember from Thursday, is because it's a very time-sensitive project that has to be precisely coordinated in order for it to be done within the time frame?
It's a very specific and complicated little project.
Okay.
Mr. Schwartz put together all the details for it, and I mean, it includes a generator, electrical work, air conditioning work, moving the fiber. It's just a very about, well, as you can see, when we get to the guaranteed maximum price, there are about 10 or 12 items in there that need to be coordinated, so.
Right, I remember that list. Okay, I'm just making sure that's why we feel like we need a
That's
manager
correct,
in this.
that's correct.
Okay.
This just, it saves us a lot of time versus trying to bid out every little piece of this
Oh.
project. And getting a one-stop price for this work would have been just as difficult.
So I'll make a motion, we approve Tyson Construction to be the construction manager for the Brunswick High MDF room.
Okay, hearing the motion by Mr. Madalla, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Urigan. Any discussion?
Glynn Academy, but
What's that?
Glynn Academy.
Glynn Academy?
You said Brunswick. Where's Brunswick?
It is Brunswick.
Brunswick Academy.
I read it.
Sorry.
I could be wrong.
I guess I should show up at the meeting.
All right, all those in favor? Motion passes 7-0.
Right.
Thank you, Al.
All right, and then the next step would be to actually approve the guaranteed maximum price that Tyson developed for us for the project. And as you can see the breakdown, it comes in at $602,126. And there is the breakdown on it.
Is that coming from East Bloss?
It's coming out of East Bloss 3,
Is that
the
within?
technology line.
All right.
You want to put a motion on that one, John?
Sure.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve R.H. Tyson for $602,126 for what Al has explained to us
As a not to exceed number.
as, not to exceed
That's
602.
guaranteed maximum price. We're hoping to whittle it down a little bit, but that's a guaranteed price not to exceed.
Need a motion? Mr. Madalla? Okay, second, please. Reverend Bobbitt? Any further discussion about the number? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Al.
We hope to have this done by Thanksgiving.
All right, next is Ms. Preston with the 2021 millage rate and the consolidated budget.
So, in the July 28, 2020 newspaper, we had our budget, our one-page budget ad that has all the different budgets: general fund, special revenue fund, capital projects, debt service. And this is, we finished up the second public hearing right before this. Also the same day, we put in the paper the 5-year history of the millage rate ad. And since we're not rolling our millage rate back to the rollback rate, we have to advertise that we are technically increasing taxes because we're not rolling back. I should have sent you an updated attachment. Can you take that down? So as you know, the millage rate did increase 5.48%, and we were pleasantly surprised. And that will generate about $3.1 million for our budget. And we are going to go with a 97% collection rate, though, just in case people can't pay their taxes this year on time. Are there any questions on the millage rate?
When was the last time we were not in a deficit?
Before the recession hit, I think our first budget deficit was 2009 or 10.
So close to 10 years?
Yeah,
This is the
a
first time in
decade.
10 years that we're actually not operating in a deficit.
That is right. It's been a long decade.
Yes.
With everything going on.
Good
which is
job.
amazing.
But we are operating with a less than typical reserve.
Not our fault, though.
Right, right.
We made financial decisions along the way based on what we knew at the time.
Correct.
If we'd known differently, we would have done something different. But, you know, I haven't finished the June 30th books out yet. That's due to the state at the end of September, but we will have, savings for last year for sure based on what happened. And then a budget surplus is definitely going to help move that fund balance in the right direction, so.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we approve the millage rate as presented.
Second.
Got a motion by Dr. Yergin with a second by Mr. Madalla. Any discussion on the millage rate before we approve it? And that millage rate is 16.157.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yep.
All right, all those in favor? It passes 7-0. Follow that up. Go ahead. You want to make a motion to adopt the 2021 consolidated budget?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Dr. Yergin, second by Reverend Bobbitt. Any discussion on the budget? Mr. Holzer?
Yeah, this might sound a little bit silly in the face of what we're dealing with these days, but maybe for the first time in my 16 years, I'm going to vote against this budget. No reflection on Ms. Preston, but there's one thing in particular, and I probably should have spoken up sooner, but I figured that I would be wasting my breath, to be honest with you. But I had a lot of an issue with the changes to some of the coaching supplements, and there's no doubt in my mind that some of our educational leaders and some of our middle school coaches were severely underpaid with regard to what they do. But there's some other positions that, given the workload they have as far as teaching is concerned and the amount of extra days, the amount of the stipend, the fact that last time we did this, we gave an incentive-based increase to our coaches. I feel like you have a lot of teachers out there scratching their heads as to why, this continues to happen when they see a lot of those folks leaving early on Friday afternoon or not showing up at all when they're still at bus duty or dealing with kids with masks or, cleaning tables and things like that. So just as a point of principle, I've got an issue with that being in the budget this time, so I'm going to vote against it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Anyone else?
I got one thing that I say every couple of years.
Yeah.
If we're going to pay more for education, then they should do that with the nurses as well. You go LPN and RN, you don't go BSN and MSN. And I do think that needs to be, if you're going to do it for the teachers, because they have a better ability to care for the kids versus a better ability to teach the kids because of their education. I still would recommend that we look into that and do something different. I guess that's Dr. Whitehead's area now, but
Yeah.
anyway, just
Okay.
a thought.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Okay, well, I'll bring a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 6-1.
That completes my action items.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us down to number 11, other. Any other?
Yes, I do have another.
Mr. Madalla?
I would like to make a motion that we make a part of our policy to use the term either mandate or require, whatever we see fit, for the children to wear masks in school.
Okay. All right. Hearing the motion on the floor, is there a second to the motion? Ms. Bobbitt with a second. All righty. Any discussion before we take it to a vote?
Yes. So I just want to be clear, because you mentioned the word policy.
Mm-hmm.
We're not like making a change to our policy with this vote, or is that what you're recommending?
I'm recommending that we change our policy, which is a part of the return to school framework, to mandate masks or to require masks may be a part of the dress code or wherever Dr. Spence sees appropriate, but make it that we have to. Whatever terminology we want to use, we can use mandated, we can use required, or whatever we want to use, and whatever policy we need to put it in to mandate it. There might be some kickback from different places, but as all that we went through, I just think it's important for us to do that.
One question. We're gonna mandate it, and say, for instance, that the kids decide they don't wanna do it, what type of discipline are we gonna give the children?
That's going to be, how I see it, is Dr. Spence will be able to work within his system to figure out what he sees is going to work best for that. I'm not saying that a kid comes in, doesn't have a mask, and gets thrown out of school. But see, it's not, when you mandate this, you're not mandating it's your only choice for school, because we have virtual education that they can do. So you can say, you know, Cindy, if you don't want to wear a mask, that's fine. While you're at home, just do virtual school. You know, there's plenty of ways to do it without it causing such conflict that kids are getting kicked out of school because they don't wear a mask.
Right.
You know, yes, it's serious. Yes, it's that serious. But there is a way to deal with it constructively versus that. I'm not saying, you know, beat them to death or nothing. So I would leave that to him to have the leeway to do what he needs to do to make it work. But at least we would be telling him this is what we want to do, and it takes it away from him where he doesn't have to do all that. We're doing what I feel we're supposed to do, which is to manage and direct and to lead our school system. Policies, person, and payroll. So, 3 Ps.
Before we vote on it, do we know what policy it is that we will be amending? And by voting on this, would we need to put it on the table for a certain amount of time?
Any kind of a policy change, you're going to have to put it on the table for 30 days anyway.
If I can add something.
Well, you can.
A policy change requires you lay it on the table, but there is a provision, you can shorten it on an emergency basis. You can shorten the time on an emergency basis. You'd have to vote on that, though.
You know, go ahead, Ian.
I feel pretty strongly that this is a temporary measure for an unusual situation, and I am not comfortable with changing our policies to deal with this, because I feel like it opens the door to use that policy in other instances where we haven't used it before. A high flu season or whatever, mask up the kids, and we've all dealt with seasons like that, and you know, it's been a situation where we keep the schools running and we keep them at a normal situation for our students. I know, I have 2 kids, y'all all know that. Middle and high school, they're coming back. They're going to have masks. They're going to wear masks. And it's really me saying that we and our family have dealt with this. We have been through the High Harbor situation that everybody knows about, with the 44% contagion rate for kids. And everybody originally thought kids didn't get this, but we have seen it in especially middle and high school. So I feel like as an education system, it is partly our responsibility to help teach these kids to be responsible citizens too. And part of that is saying this is what it's going to take for us to have in-person instruction. This is what it's going to take for y'all to be able to make it through this year and have an in-person graduation or a prom or all of those things that you felt like you didn't get last year. If you're serious about wanting to attend sporting events or extracurricular activities, it's just what it's going to take, and it's a temporary basis. We've seen Atlanta school districts open and then have to reclose schools. So if we can't learn from those that have gone before us, then we're just ignoring or thinking that we can be the exception to what's going on. And we had the hospital staff here, and they told us what our hospital rate is. So I feel strongly about the mask. I'm sorry, my mask is not cooperating. I feel like especially our middle and high school kids can handle that mask and the requirement of the mask, and I would hope that it's a short-term situation. You know, we look at it again next meeting. Is the hospital doing better? Is the community doing better? How have we seen things going on in the schools. But I just feel like if we open up and we don't require it, then we're going to close back down. But I am strongly against making it a policy situation. So in kind of my opinion is that we would, agree. I don't think that there's a vote on this to support our school system and our administrators in our framework that we've already developed specific to COVID to require the mask for the kids and even if it's just middle and high school in that enhanced mitigation yellow category. So I would vote no on a policy change.
And I would be fine to changing it to whatever we need to do.
It would fall under a procedure at that.
A regulation.
Regulation.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was going to say. If we give Dr. Spence a directive, and he creates a regulation, he can do that. If we ask him to do that, if we give him that directive, and I think changing the policy it's nothing against the policy. It just makes everything kind of messy. You have to change the policy again, or like Edie said, it's on the books now forever, and you want to have the fewer policies, the better that you have. As long as you can rely on state law, that's what we all try to do with regard to certain situations. Of course, this is a different situation, but I've gone back and forth with this. I mean, I went back and forth driving to the meeting tonight, and I've polled a number of different schools, some local, some as far as Auburn, Alabama, Statesboro, different places, and it's about 50-50 requiring versus not. But I think that, and tonight was very compelling, obviously, with the speakers we had. But, just from a personal standpoint, we'll look at this. I would be in favor of, I think where I'm going to come down on this thing now is I would be in favor of requiring masks and just, let's say we're going to require for first semester. Let's get to Christmas and reassess it. We've got a few weeks off. Let's see where we stand. It's just like Edie said, rather than doing it next week or next meeting, let's get through Christmas. We have fewer kids coming to school, we know, as it stands right now, so it's going to help in the short term. Let's buckle down right now while we can and see where we are at the change of semesters. And, like Edie says, I've got 4 children. I've got one of Valdosta State. I'm taking one to University of Georgia next week, and if you don't think I'm scared to death, then you're crazy. But he's going, and masks are required. I'm sending my 2 little ones to school, and most of you know, some of you don't know how serious Ben's issue was when he was born, and he's going to be in 5th grade this year. And when he was born, his lungs were trash. Okay, I mean he was oxygenating backwards. His oxygenation level was 45% when he was born. He had 2 open heart procedures. He's had 17 or 18 brain surgeries, and if he gets an infection, it could be catastrophic. But I've got to temper that with the fact that he needs to be back in school. He wants to be back in school around his friends, and for the last few years he's been healthy. And I'm not asking you to do this for me or for Ben. However, I'm asking you to do it for the kids that are out there that we don't know about, the teachers that are out there that we don't know about. I've got friends, and I know y'all do. We've got friends that are substitutes that are well into their 70s, they still substitute teach. So, it's not that difficult. It's been sort of a pain, but it does take some getting used to, but you can get used to it. I see little ones at Walmart all the time with masks on, so it can't be that difficult to get them and to wear them. I've been sort of against the whole mandating mask thing, but I think just in the interest of, and listen, my kids went through high school here, and I can just envision, a situation where we have, some in social medias out there. We deal with this all the time, y'all. So I think we err on the side of caution, even if it's just for a semester, and say we're going to mandate this, and it's up to Dr. Spence and Dr. Whitehead to figure out the best way to handle. And I don't even want to call it discipline. I think if we can pay coaches more right now when we're not even playing sports, then we can have some masks available for kids that show up without a mask. Okay, I'm not saying we got to provide 10,000 a day, but if there's some in the nurse's room, there's some in the principal's office, there's some in a couple of teachers' offices on each hall, whatever the case might be, we have to make those available. I've heard stories of staff members going to schools and not wearing them. We have to make sure our staff members are wearing them. And that's kind of disappointing to me, but I think that maybe we need to reiterate that to staff members that are, whether it be central office or warehouse staff or whatever. I mean, unless you're on a lawnmower or weed eater, I think you need to have a mask on, especially if you're going into a school for any reason, whether it be for 5 minutes or an hour. So again, it's a long way to say, Edie, I agree with you. I don't want to make it a policy. I think we can make it a regulation. Dr. Spence and Dr. Whitehead could write it up. We've got 9 or 10 days to go to get our act together with it. They've done a great job so far with helping us prepare for this, and so it's going to be challenging like this whole year is going to be. We knew that going in, but I think in an effort to make sure we can do all the fun things like Edie says that they want to do going forward, then we need to try to make this as positive as we can, but we need to make sure it's mandated or regulated.
Well, the motion I made, I do not mind adjusting it to both of your recommendations and blend the two. I will certainly take what I said off the table and blend what y'all said and go with that.
Well, I just have a question. Is that something that we need to vote on if we're not making a policy change, or do we just?
I think we need to vote on it.
I don't know. I'm asking.
I think it's still up for discussion though before we do anything else.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
Yeah.
One other thing something that Mike said made me think of this, and he's talking about masks being available. I know that there have been community groups that have said, we are going to help supply cloth-based masks, 1 per student, to several of our schools. And I'm going to ask a few things. I'm going to ask the community to remember that this decision is based on us caring for our community. So in a kind of reciprocal fashion, I would hope we could see more of that. Community organizations and members coming forward to agree to help and help support this. I would ask the kids that are old enough to make their decision on what they're going to do about this to consider again, do you really want to be in the schools this year or not? I would ask the parents to understand where we're coming from on this. This is not a political situation. This is just merely because our schools are not set up for 6 feet distancing. The Surgeon General yesterday just spoke to the state of Georgia, talking about, there's 3 simple things. Our hospital workers said the same thing. So this is not any kind of situation where we're trying to put people in jeopardy of their rights. We're just trying to make sure that we can stay in school and educate these kids. So if we can have people's support and help, it would be very appreciated.
Well, I would change the motion to recommend Dr. Spence either mandate or require, the words of his choice, that the kids wear masks in school.
I'm sorry, I have one more thing.
I
I also want to request that there be support for the teachers that have to deal with this. So I know, if y'all decide to do this and you're working out the situation, I want to be sensitive to the fact that the teachers are the front line, and I know that this is going to make it a little difficult for them. So if we can support them as well, that would be great.
I think though too, Jerry and I, we spoke a little bit, about a week ago, I guess, and at that time we were both hearing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Jerry, we were both hearing, because you didn't really give me a number, I guess, but we were both hearing from teachers on both sides, and I guess I was probably at that time 50-50 or 60-40 for masking, and as the week has gone on, the people I've talked to since yesterday through today, and of course it's not all 1,000 teachers, but I'm probably at 90% that are requesting that we ask kids to mask. And so that's another driving force, and it's going to be difficult, and they're going to have to use some discretion too. Everybody's had to do it tonight. You're going to have to pull this thing down, and that's the other thing that I'll say about my own son is that I worry about him just getting good air. So having a mask on, a cloth mask on, is going to impact his oxygen level, I think, John. I'm not an expert, but I think that because if you wear it for any amount of time and you're hot, you're going to have to pull it down occasionally and breathe. You're going to have to do that. We're going to have to be open to that, and it's just gonna be another thing we have to deal with, but I guarantee it's gonna be better than trying to rush into online learning like we did in the spring. You know, I think that, it'll still be better. I think everybody ultimately, after we have some adjustment period, will be better off for it.
Mr. Chair, just procedure-wise, you made a second to a different motion.
She did.
Would you be willing to rescind your second?
Yeah, I'll rescind my second, I'm sorry.
Do you second the new motion or no?
You just made the new motion? Okay,
We made
second to the new motion.
So,
Sorry, thank you.
all right. Any further discussion?
And are we gonna make a decision to reassess at the end of the semester like you suggested, or?
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
should. I mean, we might even have to do that sooner. Things might.
And
we
we can certainly do that. We can
but
change it. That's our.
I don't think that's
strategy.
gonna happen. Like
I don't, but I hear you. I agree with you.
I don't mind that.
Well, if our motion is to recommend that when we're in the yellow category, that we wear them. So if things do get better and we're no longer operating in the yellow category, that's also taking us out of the mask.
The only thing I want to avoid is going from green to yellow to green to red, back to yellow. So I would be more in favor of just saying, we're going to wear them till December. And you know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't think we'll hop back and forth like that, but I guess we could.
I doubt it.
We could go to red and then back to yellow and then to green.
Why don't we
So
just
it's
say
going to be more
spring?
confusing, in my opinion, just have to
December.
set ourselves up to maybe have to say, wear a mask today, but Monday you don't have to. But then the hospital fills up over the weekend because the numbers are delayed, get reported, and all of a sudden we're in the yellow again, or we're pushing red. So I don't know. But if we say December and literal guidance comes out, we can always change the regulations. You know, we can always take another vote and change whatever.
I think Dr. Spence can see the writing on the wall. I don't think we need to be voting on regulations because that's what he comes up with. That, just me personally, we vote on policy, we vote for a superintendent to make regulations. And if he can't see where we're coming from in this subject, then that's a direct reflection on his job performance. So I think it's redundant to take a vote knowing that how the board pretty much feels.
I'd just like him to see how everybody feels directly and know that he's being supported and directed by the board.
And with that said, now are we gonna, I just don't like this setting the precedence, and I know this is unprecedented times, but we're setting the precedence now that, okay, next year, some other thing that we don't foresee coming up, and we're gonna have to direct him to do the same thing. And, you know, are we gonna start micromanaging him through making him follow regulations set by the board? That's why we develop policies.
Well, from a conversation that we had, he said, it was in the open forum, but he said that, just tell me if that's what you want me to do, that makes it easy. That's what I'm trying to do.
Right, I think we have.
Well, I think, you know, of course I don't like the M word. I've heard that for a long time, you know, and so I think this is different than saying, Dr. Spence, we want you to go.
When was the last time we made a
hire this football
on
coach instead of that
regulation.
football coach or something. This is an unprecedented time. She said earlier that this hadn't happened in how many years? 100 years? Or whatever.
1918.
You know, in addition to that, Hank, I mean, you know,
I've been on the board 10 years, I haven't voted on a regulation.
Well, let's vote on the directive. How about,
Let's vote on something. Okay.
I've got a question, before we get on that road, I just got a question about,
He's like kissing around. Let's vote on the directive and be done with it.
what's the difference?
If we don't want to vote on a regulation, which I agree with.
We direct our
we don't
attorney
vote
all
on
the time to do
regulations
stuff.
anyway.
You
so
know, I don't know what the
let's not
problem
vote on the regulation. Let's not vote on a policy. Let's vote on a directive. I think what John's after is trying to put out there where we stand for the public, which is fine. So let's just vote on a directive to give to Dr. Spence, and then we'll move on. Is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
Now we just
That's where I was at, directive.
You just need to rescind.
No, that's what I said, a directive.
You said directive? Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right.
I'm like, that's what I said. But
Well, we vote to direct him all the time to sign an MOU or to do
So let's
this or
just do
to
that.
sign a real estate agreement or do, without
takes
us
us
taking
out
a
of
vote
the-
on buying it yet. We're going to give you the authority to create this,
So you
whatever
got it
you
on
want to call it.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Ms. Britt, you got the motion down, Ms. Britt?
I got 17.
Go back
Which
and
one?
watch the video.
I would like to recommend a directive to the superintendent of Glynn County Schools to mandate or use the term require students to wear masks and staff to wear masks in school for the first semester, to be reevaluated in December. Did I hit it all? Check.
Before we take a vote, I just want to ask one thing as far as on the discipline side of things. How is this going to, I mean, how would this look as an educator? I mean, that's what I'm worried about on the backside, and I get it. But, and I'm not opposed to being part of the team, and, you know, I was opposed to it to get go, but as far as more how you lay it out and you explain it as far as a regulation versus a policy, it makes a little more sense or holds a little more water with me. But what's the high school principals going to do whenever they've got 60 people that's going to ISS, or what? How does that discipline level going to play out? Because it's going to get, it could get messy, and that's what I want to avoid is mandating it or requiring it going to more adversely affect our educators and teaching for dealing with discipline issues and going back and forth to the admin. How do you foresee that playing out, just from being an educator all your life? And I mean, this is different, I know, but
two things that I'm concerned about is if we're requiring it, then I think that puts us in a position to have to provide them. And I mean, and I get what you're saying, Mr. Medalla. We require pants, but we don't really provide them. But this is kind of different. And so while we do have a pretty good storage of masks available, what's going to happen in November when we don't have them? And so I think we got to be ready for that. Second, I think we would have to treat this as a dress code situation and go from there. So kind of like we deal with dress code. But if we're requiring it, then that means every kid's going to have a mask on every day. It's going to be tough. And as an educator, that's going to be tough. So, but we will do it. We will do what we have to do.
I've brought this up before, and you and I have talked about for the teachers that aren't able to do the mask, is there an alternative, like a shield, a face shield?
We have 400 face shields that we have right now, and I guess we could purchase some more. But,
well, that goes back, I think, to what I said about the community needs to step up and support us. And we have had some that have done that, and the hospital has said they'll support us in it. They supported us at graduation. So if you've ever thought about helping our school system, now is the time. That's all I want to say. I want to try to take that barrier of not having the mask away. I mean, if they wear the reusable mask, make sure they wash them, all of that. Keep an extra one in a backpack if possible. But, I mean, I don't want this to be a burden on the school system because it's a community responsibility or a community effort. I'll put it that way. So I would hope that your reason number one would go away in that case.
I've been contacted by quite a few community people about providing masks, providing whatever we need.
Yeah.
And so that's going to, if this is something that you have me do, we're definitely going to need more masks.
Yes, right.
So
Everybody's heard that, right?
For clarification, are we talking about on school system property? Are we talking about inside the buildings, outside the buildings? What are we talking about there, or is that something for me to decide?
It would be my recommendation that you decide, because if they're out there, well, much more than 6 foot away, sitting there reading, you know, yeah, I'm not a absolute anything, because I felt like when you make an absolute, that takes all the variables away that can get ridiculous. So the kid's sitting on this corner over here, nobody's around them, and they're reading a book or doing something all by themselves, I don't have an issue with that. But if you're all in the classroom, you're walking in the halls, and you know, that I would leave that to your discretion. Our thing is 6 foot away, wash your hands, wear a mask. anything out of there, that's what got you that job.
I completely
You figure it
understand.
out.
I mean, because my kids will be in school, they have to eat, right? They go to the water fountain or whatever, there'll be things they can't do now, but we have to serve lunch and breakfast, and they'll have to have their mask off to eat and that sort of thing. But we're just gonna have to, 80% compliance is better than zero. You know what I mean? And maybe that's not the best answer, but I mean, you're gonna have times where they have them off, or if they're outside, or by the time they come in the school building, I think they need to have them on. I mean, I personally think that being outside and, social distancing, I mean, as I pulled up tonight, I saw the band out front, and I saw probably half the kids didn't have them on, but they weren't on top of each other either. That's gonna be up to the band director to help with that, y'all either spread out or put your mask on, just like you do in class. Stop talking, spread out and let's get back to work. Either spread out or put your mask on, whatever the case might be. So yeah, it's gonna be tough. I don't disagree with you, but I do agree with Edie, and I agree with you that we need to ask for an influx of masks and prepare like this thing's gonna be with us for years, and just have more than we could ever imagine. And when we don't use them, we can donate them back or whatever. But we need to probably get on the horn sooner rather than later if we're gonna do this, because it's just like your name badge. I mean, eventually most kids get used to it. I mean, how many kids today forget their badge? It happens every day. Here's a temporary, here's a mask, here's a disposable, whatever. So, I mean, that's kind of, I hate to put it on y'all because you've been doing so much to come up with all these great plans, but that's going to be up to y'all to figure out what works best, I think, in the classrooms. And listen, we're not going to shut schools down if we're not, 100% have this thing figured out, August 21st or whatever, you know what I mean? So we just want a good conscious effort, and in a couple of days we have to have it figured out and have plans in place through the principals about what we can do for kids that don't have masks that day. I still think it's a positive thing that we're not going to have as many kids. I mean, 3,000, 2,700, however many it is, will still impact positively the things we're having to deal with possibly. So we'll see how that works out.
So if I'm hearing everyone, it's what the vision I'm seeing is like if you're in a classroom setting, or if you're in a hall when classes are changing, or anything like that. But if you're outside during recess or anything like that, obviously you can social distance. That was my whole thing. If we were to mandate the capital M, it would become the bigger discipline issue. But if you leave it to the discretion, you're going to give a little bit of freedom and a little bit of flexibility, where it's like, we want you to have your mask on when you're in class, you're expecting to have it. If you're in halls that's packed, but you're giving you some leeway. This is my thing. I just already see it. Someone taking a picture, they shouldn't have their phones in school anyway, but they take a picture and it's on social media, and it's like them and their friend don't have a mask, and they share it, then the principal sees it, and then what? They were on school campus and they were too close. Now does that, the teacher may have a little negative thought toward a certain student, and that one gets hounded upon. That's one of the things I worry about, but I agree with the wearing of the mask. I'm kind of over that now. I get what you're saying, and it makes sense. I'm just looking at it like the discipline is going to be an issue, and somehow it's going to be an issue.
And we've got, I mean, although we've never dealt with this before, we've dealt with things, we've got a category, I can't remember what it's called, but being disruly or being unruly or whatever. I mean, so that falls in that category. If you're going to, show up the superintendent by purposely going against a regulation, put it on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever, that's an issue, and you should be disciplined for that. Under those guidelines, whether it's a smoking policy we had in place forever or a mask policy that we just put in regulation tonight, I think it goes to their discretion. There are new things happen. We had to do the whole vaping thing. Okay, so that's something we've never had before. We knew it wasn't good. We knew you needed to be disciplined for it, but it's something we never dealt with before. But we knew if you were vaping in class, it was a tobacco product and it wasn't good, and we had to deal with that whole situation. So I hear what you're saying. You're right, and there's going to be some of that. I mean, they're going to do this on purpose, and that was one of my fears. You're going to have kids that do this on purpose.
And parents that say let them do it.
Can you imagine at the old Brunswick High? I mean, at least Brunswick High's halls now are 3 times wider than they used to be, but you can't even walk down those halls and not hit shoulders.
And how about and then with elementary too? And that was one of my, because like you were saying, middle and high school there should be
the little guys
responsible
are
to do
going to
it.
be tough.
But the little one's going to be that's going to be the tough, and you may have a pre-K or whatever teacher, and then it's like keeping masks on these kids are going to be, and then you got special ed department that you have to worry about as well. So do we craft something that's on the regulation that kind of has leeway on certain, I mean, that's just going to be.
I think that we're, he spoke of micromanagement, and my thing is I don't want to micromanage him. Give him the directive and let him, these little things. If you have a child that is special ed that just cannot have something on his face, don't throw him out of school. He's not going to do that. I can't see that happening.
Right.
Well, it's a mandate. You got to do it. You know, we have to have some reason, and we have to leave that to him. We're saying, what I hear as a group, that we want it mandated or required. You sort out the discipline part, using your discretion, and that's why we put you in this position, because we know that you're going to be able to make the appropriate decisions on the vapor, the smoke. And by the way, vaping and COVID go real good together. So if they're vaping, they're going to get it. And if they get it, they're going to get real sick. But that's a whole other sidebar. So anyway, back to the reality.
Okay.
I don't want to micromanage on how he's going to have to discipline. He needs to discipline how he sees fit as a superintendent of schools to get our directives done like we all want done. So
I just don't think you need to rewrite the book. I think there are categories that this will fit under. That's just my opinion. So.
I understand.
Jerry wants us to vote, so.
Call for the vote, Jerry.
All right.
Question's been called.
All right, good deal. All right, so we've got the motion by Mr. Badala, Ms. Bobbitt with the second. I guess we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous, 7-0.
Wow. Let me say thank y'all very much for that. I appreciate it from the medical community, and they do too. I promise you. It's the right thing to do. Thank you.
We want to keep our kids safe too.
Executive session.
Yeah, I would like to say at the end of the day, it is about keeping the kids safe. And before I walked into this meeting, I was, yeah, I was 100% against mandating it, but with giving a little leeway as far as, not saying if you crawl without a mask, we're gonna, you're gonna get kicked out of school or whatever.
Right.
I think this helps with the direction what we're kind of looking at. So it's not more of a, hopefully they can gear it more towards not a punishment, but more of an educational piece. So, all righty. Any executive session material and legal personnel with anyone? Mr. Attorney, nothing, we're good? All righty.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, I hear the motion by Dr. Urigan, second by Reverend Bobbitt. All those in favor? All those in favor?
Sure.
Adjourned at
I was going to vote
7:17.
for him if you didn't
Passes
afraid to
7-0.
say it.